Do you talk about polyamory quite a bit on here? This person's capacity for connection is as giant as the ocean. My capacity, I realized, is a teacup.
It sounds like monopoly, which is like where one person is operating in a monogamous way and the other person is polyamorous.
How many things can I deconstruct in one book before people are like, you've lost your mind?
Please welcome
Alyson Stoner,
former child star turned mental health advocate and practitioner,
and author of Semi-Well-Adjusted, Despite Literally Everything.
He was involved in a polyamorous dynamic, and I had no exposure to that idea. In fact, I was coming from quite a shame-based, fearful place around a lot of things regarding intimacy. Very slowly, I found myself tiptoeing and just asking questions. That ended up shifting my life.
What I'm hearing is that knowing that they had other people to explore with allowed you to say, that's okay if I don't want to do that with you. You could find somebody, get somebody else to do it.
Just saying the letters BDSM, I was like, oh dear.
Can I ask about people's outside perspective of this connection? You look hot. Let me just fan you off, you know.
Thank you. Ooh, you have the advanced reader copy.
Yeah, feeling very special about it.
I need to talk to you about things that no one else is talking about.
you believe it's magic.
Deconstructing all of the cultural myths around what a relationship has to be and the way that that ends up limiting our capacity to simply enjoy the beautiful, infinite options of what connection can look like. There's a lot of beliefs, I think, that I inherited. You know, the happily ever after myth, the gotta find the one myth, the jealousy means you're protecting and that you love them even more. Like, a lot of things that actually ended up feeling like cages and making it harder for me to appreciate connection with people. Whereas now, I feel like I'm stepping into a very open and expansive space.
For you to find that freedom and then to amplify and pass on the permission for others to find the same, I think is a great extension of your book. It wasn't a chapter in here, but we get to write a new one together.
That's right.
Let's go. Welcome. The year was 2020.
I'm kind of blending in a little bit.
Alyson, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This is my first time getting to do a conversation in front of my bookshelf, which I'm so proud of.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. I paid somebody to work really hard at this because I do not have this skill.
That's on knowing when to outsource and collaborate.
This is such a great book of knowing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's the subtitle for me. Semi-Well-Adjusted, Despite Literally Everything. And you've been through a lot, and I'm so sorry to have read about some of the things that you went through. You didn't deserve that. You're such a beautiful spark, bright, incredible light, and to know that people have taken advantage of you almost at every turn in this book was just really heartbreaking.
I appreciate that, and I also know that some of the kind of thick-skinned, soft heart that I have is only because I had to learn how to endure, and I had a lot of, you could call them little angels that pop around in your life, my vocal coach, different people who just embodied an alternative way of living where it wasn't about extracting from the human in front of you, and it was about pouring into, and so I am who I am because of all of these experiences, and specifically some of the key people who, as you read in the book, really helped me shift my life toward healing.
Like your sister, I'm very close with my sister too, so hearing about your guys' bond was so special. So I'm gonna add this to my bookshelf right now. You get to actually see a live moment.
Oh!
And it fits the colorways.
Oh, good.
Boom. So there we go.
Love to hear it. And you have the advanced reader copy, so it doesn't have the official spine and design on it. But
I like this spine. Is the official spine going to be blue?
it's yellow.
That's going to clash.
It's right.
I need this one.
That's why we sent it to you.
Thank you. You always think ahead.
I spoke to the designer.
Okay.
We decided this was the direction.
This is for Shan. We've been knowing each other.
I know.
We know each other now. Okay, it's kind of silly to say we've known each other for 6 years because we've known each other for 3 days.
Right.
6 years ago.
Yes. And the last time we spoke, I was still mostly involved in entertainment, but now I'm like a mental health practitioner,
Yes.
certified in the field. And yeah, it's just beautiful to be able to see our vantage points shifting over time.
Well, we saw each other in 2019 before the world got crazy. But during that craziness, you found a lot of answers to questions that you'd been having. And those answers came on a very studious app called Clubhouse.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. Where many of us go to find the big answers to questions in life, right? Clubhouse was the jam.
It was a surprising outlet while we were stuck inside.
So take me back to 2021, 22.
Well, I was just trying to have conversations with people who seem to present ideas in an interesting way. You know, you could say I was learning that I was a sapiosexual human being on that app. And in particular, there was a person who really caught my ear because he was speaking so eloquently. Obviously, the smoothness in his voice also helped. But we ended up bantering offline. And then I started asking myself this question, like, am I attracted to this person beyond just the intellectual stimulation? Is this romantic? Would it be virtual? Where does this person even live? And it just so happened that he was involved in a polyamorous dynamic, and I had no exposure to that idea. In fact, I was coming from quite a shame-based, fearful place around a lot of things regarding intimacy, let alone like alternate relationship structures. There was a lot of fear and just misinformation, misinterpretations. And so very slowly I found myself tiptoeing and just asking questions like, what does that look like for you? And what he ended up sort of introducing me to is this notion that connection, intimacy, bonding can have so many different kinds of shapes. And if you're constantly trying to force every connection into one shape, you'll miss out on the dynamic interactions of letting it be what it is. And that ended up shifting my life all around because I did end up exploring some things with him, and it changed, I think, the trajectory of my relationship pathway.
When you say relationships take different shapes, are we talking about romantic, sexual, friendship, coworker? Like, what are some of the traditional shapes that exist that you realize that connection could thrive if we weren't trying to fit them into those boxes?
With this particular human, I recognized that he actually was fostering different shapes of connections where some were purely virtual, but they were still meaningful and they were still legitimate, and they really enriched his life in these exquisite ways. And then some were embodied in person, and they were infrequent, but still like deeply rich. And some were romantic, some were sexual. And what I admired so much about how he approached his landscape of connections were that he was transparent and so thoughtful about how he went about communicating with everyone involved so that there were never any surprises. It was done with emotional maturity. And it showed me like, oh, if you show up for people and you create some kind of reliable connection, there's actually more room for possibility to like trust that your partner can go have other experiences without it automatically sending off the alarm that maybe they don't love me anymore, maybe our relationship is ending. Like, he was so adamant about honoring the shape of the connection, whatever that looked like with each person, and front loading that information so no one was like, baited and switched. And so with me in particular, I was like, well, I've never done this before. I'm also not really looking for a full-time partner. So where might I fit in? What might the shape of this connection look like? And a lot of it was, long conversations at all hours of the day. But then when we met in person, we were like, oh, wait a second. I think there are more dimensions to this. What do we want to explore? And what I loved about his response wasn't just like, okay, let's get back on that escalator. Let me shift around all these other things and we'll date and then we'll, deepen, and then maybe we'll explore marriage. It was very much like, let's evolve and stay present and attuned to each other in the grand context of all of our life factors. And that was something I hadn't really experienced before. It almost felt like in previous partnerships, you know, just kind of the convenience of having a manual that lays an option out for you. I found that I kept going back into like, oh, I'm deeply connected to this person now. It must mean it's time to open that manual and get back on that escalator. And this human just continually invited me into this like fluid way of still feeling cared for. I had enough certainty to stay connected, but enough freedom to let it evolve over time. And we ended up being together in very deep ways for multiple years. And throughout that, we had other kinds of connections, platonic, romantic, and that just was like it was a different world. And I got to really, talking about shame, judgment, I really got to unpack a lot of the narratives I had around people who go about relating to humans differently than I do. Wait a second, it's not as scary out here as I thought.
All right, you get to this place where you have this really strong connection online that's intellectual, that's exciting, that's teaching you things, allowing you to expand. You're teaching that person things. You guys both want more of what each other has intellectually. You decide to meet up in person. You're like, I think there's something beyond intellectual here. Let's explore that. And then you both decide, okay, rather than us saying, okay, we have romantic feelings and we have friendship feelings, this must mean a relationship that is monogamous has to start forming. You say, all right, let's try and make it something different. What, like, if we were to go left and try to deepen the intimacy, we would then start cutting off connections with other people. We would then start spending more time together. We would then try to make investments in each other in like really more immediate ways, like, well, you must meet my family, you must meet my friends, integrate in my life in this specific way. So I kind of know what the roadmap would be if you guys were to decide at that moment, let's move this into the escalator. If you don't, what do you do instead? Like, take me to a Tuesday.
Yes, right. So a few things that came up when you were speaking was naming that many of those behaviors, indicators do help strengthen a sense of security, right? So it's not about trying to say that those aren't valuable or those can't be a part of building connection with someone. Like, want to stress that. For us, a couple of the specific things that came up around are we compatible or to what degree are we compatible are capacity. Flat out, this person's capacity for connection is as giant as the ocean. My capacity, I realized, is a teacup. And so if we spent an hour together, my teacup would be full and overflowing. Whereas he was like, oh, we've barely scratched the surface. Wait, I'm over here in the deep end. Come join me for another 3 or 4 hours of conversation. So we had to negotiate capacities to figure out, like, how do I make sure that he knows I care and I want to be here with you in this moment. And also, I'm just going to end up kind of filling up so quickly that, or, you know, as an introvert, I might have to go and recharge. My battery's draining a little bit. So that on any given Tuesday was an ongoing conversation of like, how much connection can we tolerate before we reach our max? Then the conversation of sex came up. And this person is way more experienced in just about every regard. Also, they have more years of life experience. There was a bit of an age gap, which, you know, it felt because of my upbringing and professional pathway. There was still a lot of compatibility in terms of where we were in our careers, but biologically, you know, he had several years on me. And so when it came to sexual compatibility, he also opened up my eyes to the whole world of BDSM, which, can I tell you, as a former, you know, youth group, evangelical, you know, everything for God, like my body is a holy temple and purity culture only looks this particular way. Just saying the letters BDSM, I was like, oh dear.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that entail? You know, and he like passed along the very, you know, well-known quiz just to be like, would you be interested in this? What about these ideas? Does this turn you on? And I was like, just thinking I'm going to come across so vanilla. Maybe he won't even be interested, and that wasn't at all the case. But what I discovered is that like having conversations around sexual compatibility when I knew other partners were involved meant a heightened level of care and conscientiousness. And also, surprisingly, it relaxed some of the pressure because I wasn't just trying to say, I've got to be everything for him and I've got to like every interest he has. And of course, you can still like play outside your comfort zone, but there were a lot of moments relationally where I actually was able to relax into a form of intimacy that was truly authentic and fulfilling between us, knowing like that is enough.
What I'm hearing is that knowing that they had other people to explore with allowed you to say, that's okay if I don't want to do that with you. You could find somebody, get somebody else to do it.
Yes.
Right?
And there was absolutely a thing that I was like,
get somebody else to do it.
Incredible. Over there. Sorry.
Yeah. Without this
Sorry.
like feeling of like, oh, it's my job to fulfill every one of your desires, every one of your kinks, to be a million different people, and vice versa.
And also being able to notice that his preferences and interests were beautiful and worth supporting. They were done in such, like, I just have so much respect for how he moves through relational spaces. Because, he's playing with ideas and sometimes situations that are like intense, but it's done with such care.
Was it I'm trying to analyze the cup versus the infinite more, because did that mean that for you just all you had the capacity for was this romantic connection, and he had many other romantic connections?
In that time, because it was new to me, I was clunky. Like, I tried my best, but definitely he was very gracious. I recognized that when I tried to navigate multiple connections, I actually could, but because I also wear so many hats professionally and showing up as an advocate in spaces, and I'm teaching kids all the time, and so like, parents and folks are maybe reaching out with questions at all odd hours, my heart is still deeply in community service mode most of the time, that it just became like, it just didn't feel like it was an effective use of me trying to have use of my time, trying to show up in multiple connections. And yeah, with him, I was like shocked, because listen, I can have 7-hour conversations with someone, but I was like, when do you sleep? Because he was also a professional and, highly regarded in his field, and dealing with deep social and systems change issues. And I was like, this person's inner world is just, there is no boundary. And my teacup was like, I do have to sleep.
Yeah.
I do have to sleep. And it took me a while to learn how to voice that.
Yeah.
Because I kept trying to say, okay, maybe my teacup, maybe it is one of those large water bottles. Maybe it is a small pond. And whenever we ended up doing that, it ended up feeling like some kind of break, some kind of disconnection. Because then we were trying to force it into a shape that it wouldn't be between us.
Mm-hmm. This is so fascinating to me to think about, because it sounds like a form of monopoly, which is like where one person is operating in a monogamous way and the other person is polyamorous. And sometimes people can look at that where it's just like, oh, well, that means that one person is forcing themselves and the dynamic doesn't work. While instead kind of seeing it like, look, I actually, like, there are many people who prefer to date married people. And the reason for that is they're like, I want my own space. I don't want to be with somebody who expects us to turn into more. I have a really full life. And what I have the capacity for is the desire for 1 to 2 hours every 3 to 4 days where I connect with somebody in this romantic way. And that's all I want. And it's really difficult for me to find that in a partner who doesn't already have another full-time partner who's responsible for all the other
Right.
parts that I don't really want the responsibility for.
Right.
Does it sound like that?
Yeah, that resonates. And also, I do recognize there are, of course, cases and situations where, you know, if a couple has been monogamous for forever, one really wants to explore outside. Oftentimes we hear how that can be done in ways that cause a little bit of mess or some hardship, some heartache. So this was a very proactive decision-making process, and we just checked in continually, and that allowed me to recognize that that actually is okay. I just didn't even know that was okay.
Yes.
Right? I didn't know that didn't imply I was failing at a relationship, or that I assumed maybe there's something wrong with me, right? Maybe I'm non-committal, maybe I have trust issues. But I'd been unpacking these things for 20 years in therapy, and I'm like, no, I think it's actually perhaps that I had only seen one crayon in the crayon box, and I didn't realize that there were actually 100 different colors of what relationships can look like in the crayon box. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I really love, and appreciate about this is that the self-insight and self-honesty that it takes to participate in this, and on both sides. I love how you keep referencing how your partner really was great with language and great with just being upfront, not switching or baiting and or switching, neither of the switcheth or baiteth.
Right.
But can you give me an example or model a conversation that they would have that you think that for you felt like revolutionary or mind-blowing at the time?
He would often use the terms frequency, duration, and intensity to ask, what are the expectations for our communication? How frequently are we wanting to check in? For what kind of duration? Are you cool with a quick text, or do we need a drop in? And until we've dropped in, that doesn't feel like it's hit the spot. And then intensity. Are we fulfilled swimming, in the kiddie pool, or do we have to go to the deep end for this to feel like it's honoring the connection between us? And I noticed that my frequency in contact can be so minimal, although let me be clear, we were in touch all the time, but I've recognized in connections with people, I don't feel a sense of anxiety or uncertainty if I don't hear from you for a period of time. I'm totally okay even with my closest friends. We might not talk for 3 months, but when I see you, we just pick up where we left off. And unless there was some kind of interaction that was like, uh-oh, something has gone awry, then I'm going to assume we're good until something else comes up. So frequency-wise, I learned, okay, he actually loves to be in contact every day at some kind of touch point. Intensity-wise, he can also, as you might be assuming by his capacity, he can handle deep conversations all the time. Well, for me, I'm absolutely open to be deep, but sometimes I'm literally contextually in an environment where, like, I cannot talk to you about this thing right now while I am teaching these young people. Like, it's just not the time. So we had to sort of, check in on those 3 factors. How's the frequency? How's the intensity? How's the duration? And I guess, you could probably extrapolate that to sex as well, and expectations around, like, yeah, is this enough for us to feel like this is what fulfills the relationship, or do we have to modulate? Does that make sense?
Alyson, I'm fucking vibrating right now. Woo! That is so good.
I mean, shout out to this person,
Wow. But that really hits for me because I'm in a season right now of really intentionally trying to make friends. And I'm learning how hard it is to make friends, especially because the last time that I really had close friends, I was forced to see them every day in school or at a job, right?
Okay.
So when you don't have those same aggressive incentives, because a lot of my friendships, were created either through work or they were created through school. And so when you don't really have those, my work is here. So it's not really, you're next, Brad. We're going to become besties because it's just by nature of frequency, right? Yeah. But instead, I just have to like meet somebody once, and then how do I go from we met at a chance encounter, we had this like great connection here, to an actual friendship? And then what does that look like? And then what assumptions do I make and not make? So I found myself sometimes in awkward scenarios of being like, I'm fine with this, but do they require more? Being able to just ask that person up front, hey, what is the frequency that you require? What is the duration of these check-ins? And what is the intensity that's going to make you feel like this is a friendship, that we're actually building something meaningful, and that the way that I feel about you is represented in the connection that you and I both know that we share.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a great, I'm going to literally text like 5 people right now.
Great.
Yeah, that's really phenomenal.
It made a difference. And what's funny is that that's also oddly a framework that can be used when you're exploring your own healing journey related to trauma. You can revisit early childhood experiences and ask, how frequently did this thing happen? What was the level of intensity? What was the level of duration? And that often corresponds to the impact on, the mind and body developmentally, but also maybe later in life, the level of sensitivity you might have to experiences that mirror or remind you of those earlier dynamics. So frequency, intensity, duration can come in handy in a lot of different scenarios.
Can I ask about people's outside perspective of this connection?
Pardon the interruption, but I had to tell you about the incredible sponsor of this episode, me. I mean, why not, right? It is my podcast. And on that note, did you know that Lovers is so much more than a podcast? It's a deluxe suite of services designed to help you reach your intimate potential. Now, there's tons of free tools, for example, Shai. Yup, I trained in AI on the past 20 years of my work, so if you have a quick question and want to know how I've answered this in the past, go to the homepage. Then there's the newsletter, weekly letters for my lovers you can sign up for, and last but not least, there's my resource library of free quizzes and worksheets. Now, if you like these but want more, come a little closer. Introducing the premium paid experience inside the Lovers community. Connect with like minds, book one-on-one time with me, join one of my weekly classes, and of course, be a part of the podcast. The Lovers community is $20 a month for members and free for muses because yes, I created a free preview space so you can learn more before committing. Now, I know I threw a lot at you just now, so let's keep it simple. All you have to know is go to loversbyshan.com to get everything you need and nothing more. Again, that's loversbyshan.com.
Can I ask about people's outside perspective of this connection?
You just pulled the best journalist. You just asked your question and then stopped and didn't give me anything else. That's impressive.
Thanks.
Because it forces me to have to fill in the open air now. Good thing I feel comfortable. So people's perception of this connection, it varied quite a bit. Where people wondered most was, is this a for now thing or is it a forever thing? And neither of us could give them that answer because we didn't know ourselves. We gave it a shot at a forever type of thing. And that's when it became clear to me, oh man, my path, this is where I think we're going to begin diverging. But it was handled with like so much dignity and just, so much care that I'm like, y'all, I wish everyone finds a person like this to be able to explore shapes of connection with.
Was anybody concerned, like, well, they have multiple partners, like,
oh yeah,
shouldn't you be having multiple partners, or shouldn't you be, like, what was the...
Yeah, actually, he encouraged, he talked about the beauty of symmetry in that, like, sometimes if it's asymmetrical, it can create more challenges. So he was very encouraging, like, if you meet someone, let's check in, let's talk about it. Other people felt really protective, of course. They were like, do you feel hurt by that? Do you feel sidelined, lesser? And they just simply weren't in the experience. Also, thankfully, they were able to see the fruit of the connection. And so that was something that I found important. I said, hey, I know this might be unfamiliar to you right now, and it's even new territory for me. Let's keep focusing on what the fruit of this connection is. And if you see me growing into a fuller version of myself, if you see evidence of self-trust, of confidence, of a more expansive version of who I am, like, those are, in my opinion, positive indicators that this is a life-giving connection. And so a lot of, people in my life learned not to judge the book by its cover, and to say, actually, yeah, I've never seen Alyson be willing to wear that thing, to go to that place, to try this out. And it seems like, Alyson is in their element. So maybe this is okay.
Yeah.
But I think it can be hard, right? Especially with your loved ones. You're like, you want to be protective. You want to make sure they're safe, not being taken advantage of. And I got lucky with this person in particular. Now, I will say, I met some other folks who are in the poly space after, and I was like, yeah, no, absolutely not. This is not, my whole body is on fire right now saying, hell to the nah. So that's where, that attunement comes in. Yeah.
What a gift to be able to have the real thing to compare the counterfeits to.
And to start with that.
Yeah.
Because I know the entry point for a lot of people in exploring alternate kinds of relationship, not just between monogamy and poly, but also like, exploring sexuality. Am I asexual? Am I bi? Am I pan? Like, there can be a lot of cultural myths, a lot of stereotypes, a lot of attitudes that you just gotta sift through. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure we have to run away from heartache and heartbreak either. Maybe that is the testimony of how important and meaningful it was, and grief and loss are a part of allowing this cycle of connection and shifting to occur. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes the life force of that connection does end up getting drained or falling by the wayside. And it's worth grieving over, and it's worth celebrating what it was, and maybe allowing ourselves not to just avoid connection, try to get ahead of the heartache, but to say, okay, this particular connection I'm entering, it might come with a side of heartache. Am I still willing to explore it? And can that heartache be done with compassion and not causing harm to each other? I don't know. How does that sound to you?
Well, it sounds great. And I just think I'm kind of going in a different direction mentally with this, because I have small kids now, and I have to restrict their desires a lot, because if left up to them, they'd never go to bed.
Yeah.
They'd eat ice cream all the time on continuum. They'd play all the time. So you have to be like, well, no, enough is enough. You can't do that. And you would think that for most adults, you don't have to do that. But I'm also reading this book right now called Dopamine Nation.
Oof.
Did you read it?
No, but I know about dopamine.
Right. Well, in essence, it's just basically saying that we live in this time where, in essence, it's a trap, right?
is.
Every majorly addictive thing is available on abundance, regardless of what class, economic status, or really age that you're at, and how dangerous that is. So really just saying how much more restriction that we require in order to have a chance at a happy life. And so I think that there's some people who are kind of thinking about polyamory or just non-monogamy in general, of you can't let people do that because they will just eat ice cream until they die.
Ah, yes. Yeah, the assumption, if I share that I've been in polydynamics, people are like, oh my gosh, are you just out there all the time acting on your polyness? And I'm like, actually, I'm usually just still going about the day, the structure of the day with all of the different professional hats that I wear. And it's more in an inward orientation than it necessarily is like a constant behavioral acting out of. That's not English, but that's all right. And so, yeah, something you mentioned around dopamine, I find it so fascinating. Fascinating is not the word. It's more like I grieve this a bit, that we don't get any manuals on the dopamine-inducing tech and environments that we're in. So it's almost as if our own human nature is being hijacked.
Yes.
And exploited, etc. And I think there's something really powerful about reclaiming a sense of conscious agency around the kinds of highs you do and don't want and you're chasing or feel compelled to experience, the pleasures, the lows that you're going to dip into. There's something around relationships and internet connections and constant communication, bonding, etc. I think we have to ask ourselves, in this modern world of dopamine hijacking, or like the abundance of dopamine hits, where can we find connections that are also settling and that aren't like just spikes?
Yeah.
But are places to return to a sense of home, grounding, nurturing, nourishment, places where the connections where you can actually be in the low and be in the low together, like starting to think about which connection, what states of being you can be in within the different connections you have. Because I think otherwise, if we're not aware of it, we might just be chasing spikes in who we're dating, and that's your prerogative, but I would rather you do that with conscious agency than having your own nervous system hijacked and you're just like, I don't know why I feel like I have to find another connection. I don't know why I feel like I need the next high, you know? Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, because it makes me reflect on that, like, it's the knowingness that you're not after the highs, you're after the lulls, not the lows, but how we were also kind of reflecting on the fact that when you're in a good relationship, there is a lull to it. Like, it can be the most secure,
Stable.
calming, relaxing, stable. And even in hearing about your ex-partner, it's your ex-partner, how for them, it was like they had these multiple connections that created this very sort of stable, calm life. So it wasn't like these chaotic highs and acquiring new partners constantly and then trying to jam different dynamics together to see if that could be exciting. Instead, it was like, I actually function best when I have multiple connections that are all safe and stable, where people are enjoying the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of them. And I think that that's a key marker. I think that people find themselves drawn to polyamory because they're chasing after those highs versus those lulls. That could be a good indicator that, like, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some other questions or routes I have to seek before I attempt to even connect with people, period, let alone 40.
And you know, that reminds me, kind of circling back to the shapes of connection, I'm realizing that as I allow connections, romantic, sexual, social, any kind, to be authentically what they are, the relationship aspect of my life can actually be the easiest part of my life. That is so fundamentally contradictory to what I had in my head growing up, where it was like relationships are about work. Sure, it's going to involve that, but they're going to challenge you, said with dread, you know? And I'm like, wait a second. When I allow, like, okay, this is how my puzzle piece looks, this is how your puzzle piece looks, this is how these puzzle pieces can go together. We're not trying to jam them into other configurations. Then there's actually room for it to thrive and be in good standing. And I never knew that relationships could be the simplest part of the day. I almost thought that, like, you know, work was the easiest part because you know what you're doing. You go in, you do your job, you come home, and then you have to, like, deeply unpack and have hard conversations every day, and you're gonna mirror each other, and the worst of yourselves are gonna come forward. Like, yeah, maybe. But also, if you're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, these are the colors in my crayon box. You're so-and-so, this is how these blend. Okay, let's co-create together. Let's see what picture we form. Ooh, this is pretty. Ooh, that's not so pretty. Maybe we don't need to force that anymore. Great, let's keep adding beauty here. Like, it doesn't have to be the hardest
done.
thing.
Coloring's done.
Coloring's done. Let's go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially, you know, if you found yourself in situations where you're like, wow, this is the 12th 7-hour conversation we've had this week.
Yeah.
You know, I've been there in my earlier 20s. Like,
right.
We're gonna close the loop on this someday. And then to just be with someone where you're like, yeah, no, you good? I'm good. All right. Good night.
Well, I do want to ask that on that note, the relationship that you talked about, it ended in a polyamorous connection. Why does it ever have to end?
Well, I guess that depends on how the people are defining connection, because I think for some, maybe whether you're monogamous or poly or otherwise, you might kind of treat it as just an ongoing person in your life who
Because
you
you can
love.
just decrease the frequency,
Yeah.
decrease the intensity.
You can de-escalate.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an option. And then I think for some, maybe there's a desire to be able to say like, but I'd like to actually put this in a little box and I'd like to store it away and I would like to shift focus away from this connection now. And what I realized with that particular partnership, I saw my life unfolding in an actual different direction where it didn't quite feel like what we were building fit into this other world that I was entering. And so I have this in a beautiful little box stored in memory and heart, and we're on good enough terms where we could check in with each other. I think, but that's what made sense for that connection. And I think he was ready. He noticed, okay, he's getting clearer on what he wants. And yeah, these are kind of, we're entering different stages, phases, spaces. Whereas like some of my other friends who I've known for like 20 plus years, maybe people who I've, dated briefly or who have just been friends, like there's still a thread there. So I think, there are options. There are different ways to play this out. What do you think?
I think that sounds really beautiful and poignant. And I think that even the reflection point of not having to avoid heartache, like at all costs, I'm going to keep this thing going because I don't want to have to grieve. But sometimes, what's actually interesting is I talk about grief a lot with people in like a very romanticized way because I don't experience it anymore. That when I look back on it, I'm like, man, those are the times that you just kind of know that you're really alive. And like those really high highs, those really low lows. I mean, don't get me wrong. The majority of my life, I think, is in the lull, and a beautiful lull. There's a really gorgeous boredom to my existence that I just love.
Exquisitely ordinary.
Exquisitely ordinary. And I always say the reflection point of I was in a previous relationship where wherever I came home, I'd put my hand on the doorknob and I'd inhale. Like, what's on the other fucking side of this door? Like, let's go. And then I come home now and I exhale. I know on the other side of this door, like there is stability, there's predictability, there is connection, there is, and there's sometimes your partner's in a mood, but that's kind of like more the anomaly the other way around. But
yeah,
that to be said, like when you do have those like extreme moments, it's like you'll kind of look back on them with a little bit of fondness. You may have written the craziest, poem, or you had an amazing journal entry that day. It brought out a side of yourself, a new reflection. It made you call an old friend.
Yeah.
It made you call an ex and apologize to them for something you did. It brought out something.
Yeah, it can crystallize. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me, it's actually just because we're focusing on this particular human, he had this phrase that was pulled from, I think, maybe a Buddhist teaching, but it says, being drawn into the warm breath of experience. And he constantly was looking for opportunities to engage with life where he was in the warm breath of experience. And I feel like grief, highs, this, that, anything that draws you into such acute presence where you are feeling that aliveness, even if it's painful sometimes, is like, wow, we're actually exploring the finitudes of what we can experience here as humans in this embodied form. And man, there's a lot that we can go through here.
Bitch, go off. Finitudes? You academic.
Literally, that's also a word that came into my lexicon because of him. So shout out. I'm like,
what does it mean? I don't even know what that word means.
So, what is finite versus what is infinite? So he would talk about the finitudes and infinitudes of relationships. In reality, even if my love is infinite for you, I'm going to have to contend with the finitudes of time, space, scheduling, logistics to find the shape of this relationship. I feel like this is just a testimony to how great of a human he is. So I don't know if he'll ever see this, but it's said with so much love.
I love that.
Finitudes and infinitudes.
Yes.
Listen, this is a person who I would be on the call. Maybe that's why we never FaceTimed, because I would have to Google what he was saying. I'd be like, yeah, finitudes. How do you spell that? Right. I was thinking the same thing. And to build off of that, this is before, you could go on and get little AI assisted
Yeah.
responses.
Are you still polyamorous?
You know, I think even though functionally right now I'm just on a book campaign, so I don't even know how to make time for anything other than what's on the to-do list. But I would say my orientation to connection is, it just simply feels expansive. I'll put it that way. So in the sense of traditional monogamy, I think I probably just fall outside of the parameters. And whether that falls into the label of poly or not, I think it's just about expansive forms of connection, infinite shapes and possibilities for connection.
Well, one of the infinite ways that people can connect with you is through a book. It really is an infinite way, right? Because they can really get you, hear your voice, hear your story, as if they're sitting across from you right now, the gift that I get. But you, because of the finitudes of time, you can't sit with everybody, but they can sit with your book.
Writing a book, man, you got to make a lot of decisions about how you're going to connect dots and the takeaways you're going to communicate. And I realized a few things. You can hold your memories in a lot of different kinds of arms. You can look at this memory with love and care. You can look at it through fear. You can look at it through hope, through pain, and you'll actually connect dots differently based on how you hold that memory. So I had to make a lot of decisions about what I was going to say and not say. And I do name names in there, and it's really vulnerable. So people will have a chance to feel very immersed. I tell people, read, or if you listen to it as an audiobook, go about it with care. Take your time. There's a lot in there. It can be intense in sections. Skip over them if needed. And just know that, I would love to hear everyone's feedback. It's meant to start conversations about a lot of these different myths that shape us in society. I mean, it's called semi-well-adjusted, despite literally everything, which I'm pretty sure is the unofficial mood of 2025. So, come for the childhood chaos and then stay for the cultural critique.
You're a mood. Period.
Well, we'll have to figure out the frequency, intensity, and duration of staying in touch after this.
Yes, I would love that. I would really, really love that.
I'm like, now that I know that I can walk to your place.
I know. That's actually such a gift. Let's really do that. Thank you so much to Alyson Stoner. Do yourself a favor, go and get Semi-Well-Adjusted despite literally everything they deserve, and New York Times bestseller. And lovers, we're going to put in the work to ensure that these incredible, impactful, vulnerable stories are heard. So find yourself over to Alyson's website, check out their YouTube channel, and while you're checking things out, check out this conversation I had with my lovers community around polyamory. I got a necessary reframe, because it's not that Alyson is monopoly or a part of that dynamic. Alyson is polyamorous, just so happened to exist in a relationship where the partner was actively poly and Alyson just didn't have the capacity for anything beyond that connection at that time. But if you guys have done the commitment structure quiz on the website, it talks about monopoly, so it's in there. But I really kind of spoke about it, I think, from the lens of the heterosexual relationship where the woman is deeply faithful and monogamous and the guy just can't keep it in the pants, and the wife is like, fine. Kind of like the grandparents thing of like, just don't talk to me about it, right? Or don't let it show up at church. I think that's kind of the framework that I thought this could exist. I never thought about it before in this way. So it was a good reframe for me, but I'm curious what you guys heard when you listened to it.
Man, if you just took all of this and put it into a monogamous relationship, everyone's relationships would be better. The thing, I wrote it down, the frequency, duration, and intensity, I was like mind blown, and like everyone needs to have this conversation. I know I've done it in my own relationship, not specifically like that, but there's been arguments that have got us there. We're like, it could have been so simple if we just had these tools.
That frequency, intensity, duration thing, because I was just away from Jared, it was like we needed to have that discussion a lot, because I'm doing a million things and I'm with the kids. He was working like a crazy amount of projects, trying to like fit in
as much as he possibly could to take advantage of the extra time. And so when I would call him sometimes, he'd be in the middle of something like, hey, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, go ahead, Shane, go ahead. And then I'm like, well, this is the end of my day, so I kind of need more of an intense drop in. And then he's like, but I have 10 minutes, I have time, like we can talk, like tell me what you want to tell me. And then I would start talking, and then he'd be interrupted by somebody else, and I would just get pissed. And I'm like, we needed the language to be able to say like, hey, I have the frequency, I have the duration right now. I can give you 30 minutes because we're kind of in the middle of things, but I can't do an intense conversation because my attention kind of is a little bit fractured. So I'm like, oh, this would have been a perfect example to be able to use that toolkit from. So yeah, like you, Steph, that like really lit me up. And then immediately after I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly why this framework was created. There was actually a viral article, not viral, that word is so overused. It's but there was an article that I saw for Refinery that was essentially a woman saying, I only like dating guys in open relationships, and basically just talking about how the clear expectation that you're not going to be the one or the main person, or that you're not trying to get on the relationship escalator, allowed her to enjoy the connections more and put a lot less stress. And it took away her usual codependent side that would emerge once she started to like somebody. A lot of the comments, of course, fear, judgment, putting guilt on that person. And that all stems from women believing that there is no way that non-monogamy benefits the woman. But it's interesting because a lot of the times it's the woman in the relationship who's the one who's initiating and more excited, and it's the straight male partner who's supposed to be like, amazing, this is the perfect scenario, who feels more trepidation around it. Why do you think that misconception exists out there?
A lot of people just want to like have the convenience of what they want in that dynamic without necessarily getting the consent of their partner. And I think there's a lot of fear around just being accountable to being able to maintain that relationship, because sometimes it's like, I actually just want to experience pleasure, but I don't care about like maintaining this relationship and the other person and what their needs are and stuff like that. I just want to get something for myself. So I feel like there's a lack of curiosity, but there's also like there's selfishness across the board, I feel like.
Society, right? Like men may get punished less for being in a poly relationship. The question might actually be like, gosh, how did you get her to agree to that, or something like that? Whereas with women, at least the conversation I hear more is like, are you sure you want to like play with your relationship like that? Are you sure you want to take that risk?
Listen, there is somebody that I know who would so benefit from just opening up their mind to say the word even polyamorous. Like, I think that they have a lot of conflicts with the way that they love, and a lot of guilt around the way that they loved, rather than just embracing the fact that they just have a different way. I guess I want to ask that question plainly. Do you think that similar to orientations, like sexual orientations, we are all wired differently? Like some people are wired for polyamory, some are wired for monogamy, or is it a bit of a choice?
Probably a little bit wired. Maybe it's kind of like, a scale.
I think it's the whole nature versus nurture argument here, which there's definitely a big social component, because in the society that we live in, it is more beneficial to be in a monogamous relationship than it is to be in a relationship that is non-traditional. To your point, some people have the hard wiring, and there's the people in the middle, which to queer identities as well as having that flexibility to try different things.
Curious how everybody identifies in terms of monogamous, non-monogamous, one, so how do you identify? And two, do you think you could successfully be in a relationship where you were operating under a monogamous structure and the other person had multiple relationships outside of just being with you?
I could do it, but it would have to be a hierarchical situation that we have, because I know that can cause some ethical issues for some folks, which they're like, why do you have a veto on the relationship that I have? They're my partner too. And I'm like, yes, bitch, but I'm the main one. So sit down.
Yeah, I'd say open, and like Yancy, like I guess for me, I just don't use polyamory because I'm like, if you are truly polyamory, like maybe you don't do that hierarchical thing. Maybe it is just an open relationship. So I guess that's kind of how I view it, is me and my husband, we're married and we own a house together. So there's going to be hierarchy there with whoever he, is with. So open relationship, and yeah, he can definitely meet people. I will get jealous, but we'll talk about that and it'll be fine. I probably won't veto it unless she's a total bitch, but I don't think that he would be with someone that's like that anyway. So yeah. I think it'd be fine.
It's hard enough to imagine like what 3 things I want in a partner and how that's gonna, manifest. But I'll speak as a single person. I don't see myself being in a polyamorous situation just because for me, that radical, like you can be who you are, almost an amorphous sort of thing, and then meeting someone who's also doing that and then trying to fit together means a lot. And if you are a third, you have to deal with a set structure and you have to fit your life, your experience, your body, whatever, to the framework of something established. That's going to be a no for me.
Tanisha, everybody in the future comment section is like, finally, a voice of reason in this space. All right, before I go any further, I need to know if you guys are down to go deep, because there's some things that I really want to share, and also some things that I probably really shouldn't share with the public. So I'm going to say goodbye to all of you right now and say thank you so much for listening to this episode. Go and check out Alyson's book. Make sure you find yourself back here next week, and bye. Love to you. And now back to you. Oh, Kerr.